Captain Clyde Sutton sat alone in the dim office of Outpost Vega 9, the glow of the holographic contract reflecting in his eyes like cold fire. Numbers hovered above the screen: credits, interest rates, medical debts, each one another nail, sealing his father's fate. His hand trembled slightly as he scrolled through the final clause. Marriage to Lady Arela Voss of House Keldor, Valyrian nobility. Duration, 1 week. Compensation, 1 interstellar-class vessel and full settlement of all registered human debts. The words read like fantasy, but the desperation in Admiral Thornton's voice had been very real. "You have 24 hours to decide, Captain," the Admiral had said, weathered face expressionless over the comlink. "The Valyrian Council wants a human officer of proven distinction. Your record fits. Your family's situation makes you available." Clyde had laughed bitterly at that available, like a spare part on a shelf. Around the barracks, the whispers had already started. "Sutton's marrying a blue whale for a ship," someone snickered. "Guess true love comes with warp drives." He ignored them, jaw clenched tight, knowing their paychecks could vanish tomorrow while his father's life drained away by the day. Pride was a luxury. Ships were freedom. The offer was poison wrapped in gold, but he had no choice. "Send the coordinates," he said finally, and the contract sealed with a crimson signature that felt like blood. 3 days later, he stood under the vaulted ceiling of the Valyrian diplomatic cruiser Celestial Accord, its corridors pulsing with soft blue light, as though the ship itself breathed. The wedding was a storm of alien ceremony silver fire, floating petals that shimmered in zero gravity, 1,000 eyes reflecting him like glass. Lady Arela Voss approached in a gown that cascaded like liquid metal, her azure skin glinting under the bioluminescent chandeliers. She was nothing like the mocking images the human news feeds had shown, yes. Her figure was full and imposing, but there was regal command in every movement, and intelligence burning behind eyes the color of deep oceans. When she smiled, it wasn't warmth, it was strategy, and Clyde recognized the look from countless negotiations on battlefields and boardrooms alike. "Captain Sutton," she said, her voice rich, melodic, unsettlingly calm. "House Keldor appreciates your willingness." He bowed stiffly. "Lady Voss, let's get this over with." The ceremony blurred together oaths in 2 languages, the exchange of a crystalline ring that shimmered with nanotech filaments, applause that sounded rehearsed. By the time they boarded his promised prize, the stellar venture Clyde's mind was already on escape. He had a ship, a contract, and 7 days to play husband. He could survive that much. But the moment they entered the private suite assigned for their cohabitation period, he heard the soft hiss of hydraulics behind him. The door sealed shut, and a faint metallic click followed. "What was that?" he asked sharply. Arela's expression didn't change as she pressed her palm against a silver console. "Security lock," she said matter-of-factly. "The contract requires continuous cohabitation for 7 standard days. I am simply ensuring compliance. You're locking me in?" His tone was halfway between disbelief and fury. "This wasn't part of the agreement." "It was implied," she replied, her tone smooth as glass. "My people are not in the habit of being deceived, Captain Sutton. We deliver what we promise, but we expect our partners to do the same." Clyde stepped toward the door, testing the panel. No response. He turned back to her, every muscle in his body tense. "You think you can cage me in your floating palace and call it diplomacy?" Arela met his glare without flinching. "Not a cage," she murmured, pouring herself a glass of shimmering blue liquid that refracted the starlight through the viewport. "A contract. You wanted freedom, Captain. Freedom has rules." The words hung between them like an invisible force field. Clyde exhaled slowly, the wake of his choice pressing down like gravity. He looked through the viewport at the endless stars, realizing how small his rebellion would look from this distance. 1 week, he thought grimly. 1 week to endure this gilded captivity, collect his ship, and vanish into the black. But as Arella sipped her drink and studied him with those ancient, unreadable eyes, a strange instinct flickered in the back of his mind, one that had saved him in a dozen war zones. This was no simple arrangement. She was no ordinary bride. And somewhere behind that locked door and velvet voice, something was watching how he would play his part. The first tremors came just after midnight. Soft vibrations running through the deck like the heartbeat of some vast creature beneath their feet. Clyde was awake instantly, military instinct overriding exhaustion. He rose from the couch where he'd been pretending to rest, boots silent against the glassy floor as he crossed to the viewport. Outside, the stars shifted the ship shifted, a subtle yaw correction that shouldn't have happened under autopilot. What was that? He asked, but Arella was already on her feet, her silhouette framed by the cold blue light of the control display. Her silver gown had been replaced by a flight harness of woven alloy, her hair pulled back to reveal the soft gleam of neural ports behind her ears. Proximity alert, she said, voice all business now. 3 signatures closing fast. She expanded the holographic display, and Clyde saw them. 3 Krell gunships, their hulls jagged and insectal, burning hard toward the stellar venture. His pulse quickened. Krell don't travel this deep into Valyrian space, he said, stepping closer. Not without someone paying them. House Thrax, Arella murmured, her jaw tightening. They've opposed the human-Valyrian treaty since its inception. And now they're testing our resolve. Clyde glanced at her. Our resolve? She didn't look away from the display. You are my husband, are you not? For this week at least, your survival reflects upon mine. The ship rocked as the first plasma volley struck their shields, the blue glow outside flaring white for a heartbeat. Clyde grabbed the console beside her and barked, "Shields at what?" 87% and holding, she replied, fingers flying over the controls. He watched her hands steady, precise, confident. You've flown in combat before. Not like this, she admitted. I was raised for diplomacy, not war. But my family ensures all our vessels are equipped for both. A diplomat with a warship, Clyde muttered. Figures. He took the auxiliary console beside hers, the interface adapting automatically to human input. All right. I'll take tactical. You fly. Arella's eyes flicked to him, then back to the display. You think you can handle Valyrian systems? Lady, I once flew a corvette through a collapsing wormhole with 1 thruster offline and half a crew dead. Just show me where the guns are. She hesitated, then gestured to the holographic grid. Pulse cannons forward, plasma turrets port and starboard, graviton mines aft. Targeting is neural assisted, but you'll have to rely on manual control. Fine by me. He linked in, the display flooding his vision with firing vectors and energy readouts. The Krell ships broke formation, moving to encircle them. Clyde smiled grimly. They're trying to box us in. Let them? Let them? Arella's tone was incredulous, but she followed his commands. Reverse thrust on my mark, he said. Angle the nose 20 degrees starboard. Another volley struck, shaking the deck. Shields at 62? Arella called. Now, Clyde barked. The ship's engines roared in reverse, catching the Krell formation off guard. He fired all forward batteries. The stellar venture unleashed a storm of white fire that ripped through the lead ship's flank, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. The second gunship swerved, colliding with debris from the first. Direct hit. Arella shouted, astonished. Clyde didn't answer. He was already targeting the third. They're adjusting vectors, she said quickly. Trying to drive us into the asteroid field. Perfect, he said. We'll make them think they're winning. The ship plunged into the debris field, chunks of rock flashing by as the Krell pursued. They'll lose maneuverability here, Clyde said, flipping a safety. Deploy the graviton mines. That will detonate too close to. Trust me. She did. The mines deployed behind them, shimmering spheres of unstable gravity. The pursuing Krell ship fired once. Twice then, its plasma bolt struck one of the mines. The explosion tore the remaining vessel apart in a silent bloom of blue light. For a moment, there was only silence, the hum of engines, the fading alarms, the stars returning to their rightful places. Clyde exhaled slowly, removing his neural link. Next time you lock me in a room, he said, at least tell me it comes with a war. Erla laughed softly, the sound surprisingly warm. You handle yourself well, Captain Sutton. You're not bad yourself, Lady Voss. Their eyes met across the flickering light of the console, the hostility between them softened by shared survival. Perhaps, she said, this arrangement will not be as intolerable as I feared. He leaned back in the chair, feeling adrenaline and exhaustion crash together in his veins. Don't get ahead of yourself, he said, but his tone lacked bite. Outside, the wreckage of the Krell ships drifted like dying embers across the void. Somewhere deep inside the vessel, the locks still glowed red, but the space between them had changed. The cage no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a beginning. The command center of the Astral Dominion was a cathedral of cold precision, all silver arcs and holographic geometry pulsing with strategic data. When Clyde and Erla entered, the air felt charged, not just with electricity, but with suspicion. Valyrian officers stood in tense clusters, voices low, eyes flicking toward them before snapping back to their consoles. At the center, Chancellor Morath waited beside a circular tactical display that painted ghostly blue light across his face. Lady Voss, Captain Sutton, he greeted, inclining his head slightly. Your timing is impeccable. We've intercepted communications between House Thrax and a source aboard this vessel. Erla's expression sharpened. A traitor? A mole, Morath corrected grimly. Someone with access to high-level diplomatic and fleet data. He gestured toward the display, where encrypted signals spiked and wove like a heartbeat on the verge of arrest. These transmissions were masked as environmental logs, but our AI detected pattern anomalies. The origin traces back to the diplomatic wing. Clyde stepped closer, studying the data. How long has this been going on? Since before the attack on the Stellar Venture. Whoever this is, they've been feeding Thrax fleet movements and security details. Erla's tone turned steely. If Thrax knew our location, they meant to strike during the ceremony. Morath's gaze slid toward Clyde. Captain, you showed remarkable tactical intuition during your engagement with the Krell. I'd value your assessment here. Clyde examined the holographic signal map, tracing lines with a finger. The leak's too clean. Whoever did this knows counterintelligence procedures. They're sending staggered bursts through multiple subnodes to avoid detection. But if you compartmentalize the next data packet seed, slightly different coordinates to different departments, you'll see which copy gets relayed back to Thrax. It's an old trick. Works every time. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. Impressed. Morath's lips twitched in what might have been approval. A human honey trap, he said. Crude, but effective. Crude keeps you alive, Clyde said. Erla's glance toward him was approving, almost proud. Implement it, Morath ordered. Quietly. No alerts. If the mole senses pursuit, they'll disappear. The officers dispersed, and Morath leaned closer, lowering his voice. The attack accelerated our timeline. The bonding of souls ritual must proceed tomorrow. House Thrax will not hesitate to strike again, and your union is now both symbol and shield. Erla stiffened. Tomorrow? That ritual requires weeks of preparation. We have no weeks, Morith replied. Only enemies who grow bolder by the hour. Clyde frowned. What exactly does this ritual involve? Erla hesitated. It is intimate. A test of connection. Emotional and physical resonance confirmed by biochemical synchronization. Meaning? Meaning, Morith interrupted smoothly. It demonstrates that the alliance is not merely political, that it is alive. Without it, the conservative houses can challenge your marriage, and by extension, the treaty. Clyde let out a low breath. So if we don't perform it, the alliance collapses. Erla's voice was quieter now. It was supposed to be ceremonial, not personal. You weren't meant to know this yet. That seems to be a pattern, he said, eyes narrowing. Morith stepped back, sensing the current between them. You may use my private chamber to discuss your preparations. I trust you understand the stakes. The Chancellor left, and the room fell into a silence thick enough to choke on. Erla sank onto the edge of a metallic bench, the light from the tactical displays catching in her silver hair. I understand if this is too much, Clyde, she said softly. The contract was meant to solve your debts, not entangle your conscience. Clyde paced the room, jaw tight. You manipulated me from the start. Locked doors, half-truths, hidden agendas. Was there anything honest in this arrangement? She looked up at him, sapphire eyes luminous. Yes, you? He froze. What? When my family sought candidates, I reviewed hundreds of files, she said quietly. Most were efficient, cold, predictable. But your record showed something else. Mercy under pressure. The capacity to see life, not just objectives. That's why I chose you. Not because you were desperate, but because you could change everything. He stared at her, words stuck somewhere between anger and disbelief. You think flattery fixes this? No, she said, but truth might. She rose, closing the distance between them. Her hand came up to rest against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart through the uniform. The ritual measures resonance, Captain Sutton. It cannot be faked. If there's no genuine connection, the sensors will reveal it. If there is, she trailed off, her voice trembling just slightly. It will bind us. For real. The air between them thickened. Clyde swallowed hard, the fight draining out of him. You're asking me to risk more than my freedom. I'm asking you to trust me, she whispered. He held her gaze for a long moment, then exhaled. Then we start now. Her brows lifted. Now? If this ritual needs resonance, he said quietly, stepping closer, then we'd better make sure we have it. Erla's breath caught as his hand found hers, rough human fingers curling around blue silk skin. The tension between them snapped, replaced by something raw, magnetic, undeniable. When she tilted her head upward and kissed him, it wasn't diplomacy, it was surrender. The holographic lights flickered, reflecting the rise and fall of two silhouettes, drawn together by necessity and something dangerously close to fate. Outside the chamber walls, the astral dominion drifted through the starfield, silent witness to a union that had started as transaction and was turning. Inexorably into truth.dawn aboard the astral dominion came not with sunlight, but with the slow brightening of the ship's biosynthetic walls, a soft radiance that bathed the command decks in muted silver. Clyde woke to it, disoriented for only a moment before the previous night came flooding back the kiss, the honesty, the quiet surrender that had erased the line between contract and connection. Beside him, Lady Erla Voss lay in serene stillness. The silver-white strands of her hair fanned across the pillow like threads of starlight. Her skin caught the glow of the simulated dawn, pale azure deepening to the soft hue of an ocean at sunrise. For a long moment, Clyde simply watched her breathe, the rise and fall of her chest a reminder of how alive she truly was beneath all the politics and ceremony. He hadn't meant for it to happen, hadn't planned for any of it. But somehow, in the midst of deception and duty, he had found something real. She stirred and opened her eyes, a slow smile touching her lips. "You're staring again," she murmured, her voice drowsy but teasing. "Just verifying the sensors didn't malfunction," Clyde said dryly. "We were supposed to generate resonance, remember?" She laughed softly, the sound low and musical. If the readings were half as intense as it felt, the ceremony should go smoothly. "Smoothly," he echoed, pushing himself up. "That'd be a first." The illusion of calm shattered a second later, when the cabin lights flickered and a faint chime pulsed from the security console. Clyde was instantly alert, reaching for his sidearm. Arilla's expression turned to ice. "Motion in the antechamber," she said, crossing to the wall and activating the hidden feed. The holographic projection ballooned to life, showing the outer suite. A Valyrian woman in diplomatic robes stood before the communications terminal, her back to the camera. Even from behind, Clyde recognized the posture liaison Perth, one of the aides from the reception, always courteous, always watching. "She's accessing the secured network," Arilla said, disbelief coloring her tone. "No one but the Chancellor has that clearance." "Not anymore," Clyde said, eyes narrowing. "Look, she's inserting a data crystal." Perth's hands moved rapidly, her gestures efficient, practiced. "She's downloading tactical schematics," Arilla breathed. "And the route of the diplomatic fleet." "She's not getting far," Clyde muttered, already moving. "You circle the service hatch. I'll confront her from the front." Arilla nodded once and vanished through the side corridor. Clyde waited until her signal blinked green on the console, then palmed the door open and stepped into the room. "Step away from the terminal," he said flatly. Perth whirled, eyes wide, mouth opening in a startled gasp. "Captain Sutton." "Don't lie," he snapped, leveling his sidearm. "You're transferring classified data to House Thrax." "You don't understand," she stammered, hands trembling. "They have my bondmate. They'll kill him if I don't. They don't take hostages." Arilla's voice cut in, cool and sharp as a blade, emerging from behind. "They buy obedience with credits." The mask of panic on Perth's face slipped, replaced by cold defiance. "You think you know how far their reach goes, Lady Voss? You've been living in a golden cage your whole life. You can't imagine what they do to those who fail." "Then enlighten us," Clyde said, keeping his weapon steady. "Who's your handler?" "You wouldn't survive knowing," she hissed. Her jaw tightened, and then she bit down hard. Arilla lunged forward, shouting, "No!" But it was too late. Perth convulsed, a blue foam bubbling from her lips before she collapsed to the floor. Clyde cursed, kneeling beside her, but she was already gone. He pried open her hand to find the crystalline data drive still clutched within. "We've got the proof," he said grimly. Arilla stared at the body, her expression unreadable. "And confirmation that Thrax's corruption runs deeper than we feared." Moments later, security teams swept in, sealing the chamber. Chancellor Morath appeared via hololink, his tone grave as Clyde handed over the data. "This confirms our worst fears," Morath said. "House Thrax planned a coordinated strike on the fleet during the Bonding of Souls ceremony. We must alter the fleet's configuration immediately." "And the ceremony?" Arilla asked. "It proceeds as planned," Morath said. "If we cancel, Thrax wins. But we will fortify the hall with covert guards. Captain Sutton, your tactical acumen has served us well. Continue your ... role. Make the ceremony appear unchanged. Let them come." The holla faded. Clyde looked at Arilla. "So we're bait." "Yes," she said softly. "Bait and symbols. The treaty depends on it now." He studied her a long moment, seeing both fear and determination in her eyes. Then let's make it worth the risk. Hours later, the great hall of unity blazed with ritual light. Hundreds of Valyrian and human delegates gathered, robes and uniforms reflecting the glow of floating crystals overhead. The air shimmered with the scent of sacred oils and ozone. At the center, on a raised platform, Clyde and Erla stood side by side before the officiant. Her attire was breathtaking layers of silver gauze woven with threads of light that rippled with her heartbeat. Clyde wore a deep blue uniform trimmed in Valyrian silver, a fusion of both worlds. The officiant lifted a crystalline vial containing a luminous blue liquid. "The bodies have spoken," he intoned. "The minds must follow." Erla took the chalice first, eyes steady on Clyde. "Two bodies, two minds, one path forward," she said clearly, then drank. Clyde followed, raising the chalice and meeting her gaze as he echoed the ritual vow. "In battle and in peace, my strength is yours." A roar of approval filled the hall right before a flicker of movement near the east entrance caught his eye. A diplomat's hand slipped beneath his robe. Clyde gave the prearranged signal 2 fingers brushed against his collar, and in an instant, concealed security units moved. Energy bursts lit the air. 2 traitors went down before the crowd even understood. The officiant never flinched, continuing the chant as if nothing had happened. The ritual completed in perfect symmetry, sealed by the final gesture, a kiss under the gaze of every dignitary in the alliance. When Clyde's lips met Erla's, the applause drowned out everything else, a thunder that washed away doubt, politics, and fear. Somewhere in the shadows, House Thrax's final agents were dragged away, their rebellion broken. When it was over, the hall erupted in cheers. Clyde looked into Erla's eyes and saw the truth neither of them could deny anymore. What had begun as a bargain had become a bond. What had started as captivity had turned into choice. And above them, the Valyrian banners unfurled beside the human sigil, 2 emblems catching the same light. For the first time, it felt like hope. The stars beyond the viewport burned like shards of glass scattered across velvet, and for the first time in years, Clyde Sutton looked at them without bitterness. The war, the debts, the humiliation of selling himself into a marriage contract, all of it felt like something that had happened to another man. The stellar venture drifted in low orbit over the glowing spires of Valyria Prime, its hull newly restored, its engines singing with quiet power. In the reflection of the glass, he saw Erla beside him, no longer the guarded noble who had locked him in, but a woman who had fought beside him, lied for him, kissed him under oath, and somehow become his compass in the chaos. The aftermath of the bonding of soul ceremony had been swift and ruthless. The exposed traitors had sung under interrogation, naming 6 Thrax operatives embedded throughout the council. Coordinated strikes across the outer sectors had gutted their network, forcing the remnants to flee beyond the rim. The human Valyrian alliance had held, and against every odd. The man who had entered this union as a debtor now stood at the center of galactic history. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow, restless, caught between freedom and something deeper that frightened him more than any battle ever had. Erla joined him at the viewport, her reflection overlapping his own until their silhouettes merged into one. She'd traded her ceremonial gown for a fitted flight uniform, but the air of command remained. "The fleet has reported complete containment," she said softly. "House Thrax has surrendered." "So we won," he said. "You won," she corrected. "Your tactics saved us all." Clyde gave a half-smile. "You make it sound noble." "It was just a decoy. Feed the traitors false data. Wait for them to bite. Old soldier's trick. Sometimes the simplest traps are the most elegant." Her voice carried warmth now, a tone that once would have unsettled him. "And now, as promised, your debts are cleared, your ship restored. The week is over, Captain Sutton. Clyde studied her carefully, trying to read what wasn't being said. You're releasing me, he said quietly. That was the deal, Arella replied, her eyes never leaving the stars. You've fulfilled every clause. The stellar venture is registered in your name, unrestricted. You are free to go wherever you wish. The words should have thrilled him, but they landed like a blade between his ribs. And you? He asked. The council still needs a figurehead for the treaty. You'll stay here, play politics. I'll continue my duty, she said, almost a whisper. It's all I've ever known. Clyde turned away from the glass and faced her. That's not true anymore. Arella met his gaze then, the faintest tremor in her voice. What are you saying, Captain? I'm saying the week's over, but I'm not done, he said, stepping closer. I thought this ship was the prize. Turns out it's just the excuse. A faint laugh escaped her, more fragile than before. And what if I told you you could never truly leave me, even if you tried? Clyde blinked. What do you mean? She reached for the console and activated a private holosequence. Lines of code shimmered between them, intricate, alive. The stellar venture's neural systems are bound to a Valyrian biosignature, she said softly. Mine. The ship and I are linked life to life. It can only operate if I am aboard. The words hit him harder than any revelation before. You. He stopped, searching for anger and finding only disbelief. You tethered yourself to it? No, she said. My ancestors did. Every flagship of House Keldor is bound to its chosen heir. You were meant to take the ship and leave me behind, but fate had other ideas. Clyde's pulse thudded in his throat. So even if I wanted to go, you couldn't, she finished gently. Not without me. Silence filled the bridge, broken only by the distant hum of the engines. Then Clyde laughed, a sound rough with relief. You planned this, he said, shaking his head. From the moment you locked that cabin door. Her smile was faint, wistful. I hoped, but I didn't know what would come of it. Now you do. He reached for her hand, the gesture unforced, certain. You said I was free. Fine. I choose you. For a moment, her breath caught. Then she let it out slowly, her fingers tightening around his. And where does freedom take us, Captain? Wherever the stars haven't stopped burning, he said. You picked the first course. She smiled then, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. The Cygnus Nebula. My grandmother said the radiation there paints light like silk across the void. I've always wanted to see it. Clyde grinned. Then the Cygnus Nebula it is. He moved to the navigation console, the ship's systems thrumming to life beneath his touch. Arella joined him, entering her own sequence. The stellar venture's engines flared, gathering light. Outside, the great fleet shimmered like a constellation in salute as the ship turned, breaking formation. Engage FTL, Clyde said. Let's see what freedom feels like. The stars stretched into ribbons of silver. Inside the cabin, the glow of hyperspace reflected across their joined hands, blue and human fingers entwined. The man who had married an alien to escape poverty had found something no ship, no treaty, no fortune could ever give him. As the stellar venture vanished into the light, Clyde glanced at her and whispered, Being locked in with you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Arella's answering smile was soft as starlight. Then let's never unlock it. And together, they disappeared into the endless horizon of stars, their journey just beginning.